Next time you wonder whether you're capable of something or you second guess yourself, I want you to remember these two faces, Dave Fortier and Leanne Yanni, two Bostonians who had every right to say I can't, but who instead are saying I can and I will. First, let's talk about Dave. Last year, the Newburyport native was running in his very first marathon. At 2:49 p.m., he was just feet from finishing.
Just having a great time, reflecting on the day, reflecting on why I was there and the reason I was running. And then this huge flash on the left-hand side, and just this concussion hitting me.
Fortier had been hit with shrapnel, one of the few runners injured by the blast. The force of the explosion sent him flying. He ended up in a heap of injured people by the grandstands. But as his head throbbed and foot ached, all he could think about was his wife and young daughters who had been cheering him on at the turn onto Boylston.
I remember giving them a big wave. My daughter actually has a picture of it. And I continued on down the side, so they knew kind of approximately where I was.
And fortunately, even through the confusion and chaos around him, Dave was able to think clearly enough to type out a text message to his wife that he was alive.
And they were far enough away not to see the devastation that was caused, but they did hear the explosions. They could see the explosions.
Closer to the finish line, Leanne Yanni was also watching the marathon. The runner and physical therapist had only been living in Boston for a couple of months. She came to cheer on one of her new clients. She never could have expected she'd be putting herself in harm's way.
What just happened? Looking down and seeing your bone is kind of a eerie situation.
Shrapnel shattered her ankle, severed a nerve, and ripped her skin open so wide that she'd need skin grafts.
They told my husband if I had just been turned like a half an inch, that the shrapnel, instead of kind of skimming my leg, would have gone straight through my leg.
Months and several surgeries later, Leanne and Dave would meet for the first time at a support group for survivors. And when they learned the BAA was offering them all entries into the marathon, it got them thinking.
It was kind of like, hey, what do you think about starting a running group? And I was like, that is a fantastic idea. Let's get that together.
What better way to empower some of the other survivors they'd met than by running in this year's marathon? They rallied 25 other survivors who'd been injured in a variety of ways.
From burns to, upper arm, shrapnel issues, lower leg shrapnel issues. And some people have a lot of more emotional injuries.
They came up with the name Team 415 Strong. Those numbers signifying the date that changed their lives forever, but also the date that brought them all together.
We're all pulling together for each other, and, we just carry each other along the way.
And the camaraderie doesn't end there. Marathon Sports actually paired up the 415 group with another group for training, and that group just happens to be the official One Fund running group. So you've got the volunteers helping the survivors.
Volunteers like Ken Gordon.
That is a lifelong Bostonian. I feel a certain kinship with them and a great deal of admiration.
An attorney at a prominent Boston law firm, Ken did pro bono work for the One Fund. Now he's running in his first marathon on the One Fund team.
This has been the most exciting and rewarding endeavor I've ever undertaken.
So let's do a posture reset.
370 people applied for just 50 spots on the One Fund team. They had to commit to a rigorous training schedule and agree to raise a minimum of $8,000 for the One Fund.
My goal is $15,000, which seems like a ton. It's one prosthesis.
It has required a tremendous amount of hard work, dedication, and mental strength on both teams' parts, not to mention running through often a lot of pain. But they know when they watch one another cross that finish line next week, it'll all be worth it.
We're going to stay on Boylston until everybody's done. Make sure that everybody gets back.
If that's not Boston Strong, I'm not sure what is.